Hi there, and welcome to my very first YouTube video. My name is Joanne, and I am sitting in my backyard under my gazebo, and I am staring at the garden that has inspired this channel. So, you're probably watching this video because the title either intrigued you or it resonated with you. And either way, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my story and how it was I came to be laid off and why I'm creating this space called Rooted in the Garden. So, for the past 15 years, I worked in post-secondary education at a college in Canada, and I supported students in the classroom. I developed programs, and I created learning opportunities for thousands of students through the span of my career. And I loved my job. I loved my job and I loved my students. But 3 months ago, I found out that my job was eliminated. And effectively, I was laid off. And I wasn't surprised. I wasn't caught off guard because our college system in the province where I live has been under enormous stress and pressure financially, and there have been a lot of restructuring changes that have been happening across all of the colleges in the province. And the year prior to my layoff, there was a lot of layoffs that had happened at the college where I worked, and I knew that there was likely significant changes still coming this year. And so I got caught up in it. And knowing something is going to happen versus living with the reality of it is very different. And when the layoff happened, it hit harder than I would ever like to admit. And that's why it's taken me 3 months before I could even make this video. I have been spending the last 3 months in my garden, contemplating a lot of things to get to this place where I could sit in front of my camera today. And so I was laid off from the college, but it's also important to kind of tell you that I worked full-time at the college, and I also have always worked part-time. I've always had part-time gigs here and there, and I'm a trained yoga teacher, and I trained to become a yoga therapist 5 years ago. And I used those expertise, and I taught a lot of students about stress and nervous system responses and burnout and the signs and symptoms, the things to look out for. And I taught students in the classroom, in workshops, in yoga classes about living mindfully and how to reduce stress and find some sort of balance. And yet, I find myself completely burned out. And that's probably because, one, I worked a lot, which there's demands with any work that we do. But the last few years at the college were probably the most stressful in my entire career for a variety of reasons. But there was just this constant level of uncertainty that was just permeating the work environment. And it really started affecting my health to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had generally been healthy my entire life, and then all of a sudden in the last 2 years, I had significant health issues, and I had injuries for the first time that rocked my mobility, my ability to move without pain, and my energy decreased. I gained a ton of weight, so it's very difficult actually for me to make this video because I barely recognize myself right now, so please be kind. And I knew I was in burnout, but you keep pushing through because that is what we do. And what I've learned is it's one thing to read about burnout and talk about it in a classroom, in a lecture hall. And it is something completely different when you are living and breathing it every day. So when the layoff finally happened, something unexpected happened too. Of course, as soon as I got that email in my inbox, fear set into my brain like fire. Panic and anxiety set in as well. But what am I going to do? How am I going to financially contribute to my family? And a lot of grief. Grief because I knew I was going to be losing a significant part of my identity. But funny enough, those feelings subsided rather quickly, and relief set in. And the relief came from the fact that I no longer had to keep pushing through. It came from me no longer having to do everything on my own or be everything to everybody. And that layoff finally gave me permission to stop. And that's really where the bulk of my relief stemmed from. Relief to just stop and take a pause. And that's what I've been doing. So that's who I am. That's how I got here. And I'm nearly 50. I'm finding myself at a crossroads in life because I don't know what comes next. I've always been somebody who has been striving towards something. I've always had goals. I've always had a plan A, B, and C. And even though I knew that this layoff was likely going to happen, I didn't have a plan. And it's probably the first time in my life that I had no plan. And again, that in itself was a sign that I was completely burnt out because I was too damn tired to think about what I would do if I lost my job. So I've been spending a lot of time in my garden for the last 3 months, and what I have come to realize is that I need time to heal. I need time to heal and recover from this burnout. And more importantly, I need to discover who I am right now and who am I when I'm not standing in front of a class. And that's where my garden comes in. So in that time already, spending countless hours weeding and watering my garden, planting seeds, I now know that my garden is not just a place where I grow things. I've always been a gardener, and the garden has always been a place of softness for me, but it's really become my refuge. And it is a place right now where I can actually hear myself, not the long to-do list, the should-haves, could-haves. I'm actually listening to me for once with some clarity. And it's also the place that doesn't ask anything of me. I just get to show up and be. And that's because my garden doesn't care about who I am, that I don't have a plan for the future. It doesn't care about my productivity. It doesn't care about my resume. It doesn't care about my qualifications, my availability. It doesn't care about any of those things. And that's why it's a safe place for me right now. And I'm reminded in the garden that everyone has a season. And my season just happens to be one of transition. And I've been taking a lot of time that I've always longed for. I'm taking that time for myself right now, and I'm resting and listening to my body again. And taking time and resting doesn't feel like failure. It feels very productive, actually. And my garden is really reminding me that not knowing is part of the process. It's life. So I want, rooted in the garden, this space that I'm trying to create, to be about stress and about burnout, but through the lens of a garden, because I think it's far more accessible than any textbook that I have ever read or taught from. And I want this space to be about nervous system regulation, about slowing down and living authentically. And that's why you won't find any fancy staged videos here. I'm going to be showing up just as I am, because I need to learn to embody that I am enough just as I am. And I'm sure that resonates with a lot of women. And hopefully at some point I will get on my yoga mat for me again and hopefully share something that I'm very passionate about with others, because that's something that I've wanted to do but just haven't had the time to do, to explore. And now I have that time. I just need to get to that place where I feel safe to do so. But ultimately, I want this space to be about navigating difficult things, difficult life transitions with less fear, less anxiety, less panic, with a little bit more grace and a lot less pressure to perform. And I want it to be about staying grounded in who we are and looking after ourselves and our own personal growth, because that is what the garden ultimately teaches me. A garden is something you cultivate, and it's also something you cannot control. And that is the metaphor of life and for burnout recovery. So if you are someone who is an overachiever like me, if you are someone who has spent your life taking care of everyone else like me, if you have been putting yourself on the sidelines for a long time like me, if you're exhausted, if you are overwhelmed, if you are burnt out, if you are in midlife trying to figure out what is next in your life, just know that you aren't alone. I'm right here with you. And I certainly don't have all the answers. Not by a long shot. But I do have a garden. And I have a willingness to share my own journey and a desire to share what I have known, theoretically, scientifically, all that stuff, but what I am also learning right now through that garden, and that garden as a teacher. So, if any of this resonates with you, any of it, I would love for you to follow along. And perhaps together we can find out what our next season has in store for us. That's it. That's all. Thanks for being here.